three of us voted on a split council vote, 3-2, to permanently preserve this structure in this park for the neighborhood, to abandon the entitlements for the senior housing that was planned at one point in the back part of this property, and to ask staff and community to investigate possible uses for this as a permanent public facility. So it was a very long road to get from here to there, but and we're not done yet because this is just a pivot. We've now pivoted. We're going in a different direction, and ultimately whatever uses we all come up with as a community will have to be finally and fully submitted to council at a future date. So, but we've pivoted. So I want to introduce the Mayor Pro Tem. He has been on this project from the very beginning, on the side of Save Tara people in the Wahona Neighborhood Association, Jeffrey Prank.
Thank you very much. This is really a very special day for me to be here. I met Elsie Weissman in 1997 when I was campaigning for office the first time. This was about a year or two before she donated the property to the city of West Hollywood. It is clearly, by anybody's reckoning, just an absolute gem in the city of West Hollywood. It is a respite from the busy streets and the noise and the congestion, and it is a snapshot into West Hollywood history. Standing in front of this house, from that sidewalk, looking at this property, this looks almost like it did in 1914 when the home was built. It looks a great deal like it was when Dick Weissman was a little kid in shorts running around on these grounds, playing with his friends many years ago. There's trees here. These two huge trees planted by Elsie Weissman. The city of West Hollywood, being one of the most densely populated cities in the state, is terribly underparked. We have terribly deficient in terms of open space, and we now have an opportunity. We're going to go through a public process and evaluate a number of different options, but it's my hope that as much of this space can be preserved for the community in perpetuity. I think that's what Elsie wanted. I know that that's what the neighbors wanted, and I'm really pleased that that's the direction that we're going from now on. I look forward to the weeks and months ahead as we begin our vision for this property. Thank you.
All the people behind me, of course, are very involved in this process from the very beginning, but if there's any 8 years, but if there's any one person who kind of symbolizes the effort to preserve 1343 Laurel, Save Tara, it's Allegra Allison.
The very main core here that we started with, Jack Merrill, Daniel Watson, and Roy Oldenkamp, and of course William Nish, Dick Weissman, and Heavenly Wilson. And we worked very long and hard, and every single person who contributed is saved this beautiful property for generations to come. And this vote last night was incredible, and these three council members have the vision to see that people need parkland as well as affordable housing, and the city's been building affordable housing throughout the city. And but there aren't any parks coming along, so this is amazing and exciting and a wonderful step. So, hooray, everybody.
Finally, I'd like to introduce Dick Weitzman, whose mother donated this property to the city. Dick, would you like to say a few words?
If I start, I'll be here, but you'll be...
He'll be here till next.
We'll turn the power off when you want to.
That's what you'll have to do. Well, good afternoon. It's really a good afternoon. My mother would have loved to have been here. The high points, and there was a lot of high points that happened. A lot of major known people have been through this house. Of course, with me, the major moment of my life came here, and that was in 1926, 85 years ago, and I was born right up there in that room. So that was rather important for me. I was 6 weeks early. That's why I was there instead of a hospital. And my older sister, Virginia, was 4 years older, never let me forget. She said I was nuts, and the reason was that my brain didn't have enough time to develop because I was 6 weeks early. But anyway, when I was born, My mother and father, my sister and myself lived upstairs on that side of the house. On this side of the house, my mother's brother and his wife and his son lived, and my grandfather temporarily lived there until he got married, and then my father built a little teeny house that's in back, and that's where my grandfather lived. Growing up, of course, here, when I was a kid, was very nice. They had no traffic, no smog, no gangs, no guns, no dope or drugs. And the entertainment was terrific. We had the Oriental Theater, the Carmel, and the Fairfax. We had our Gilmore Field football stadium. I was there the day that Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and I was mad because a lot of them were in the reserves. That didn't make me happy. I was young at that time. But anyway, when I graduated Fairfax, I enlisted in the Air Corps and went in the Air Corps in World War II. Now, just before the war, my father converted the house into where it is today, 4 apartments. He did it without ever touching the exterior walls of the house. And my mother and father lived the rest of their lives in the upstairs apartment on the north. The cousin of my dad's lived upstairs. My mother's lived upstairs. Downstairs, my sister lived with her first husband, and then with her second husband, and then with her third husband. But
she's sort of like me.
She's not around. And the person below there initially was my mother's flower girl at her wedding and her husband. And then there was a couple of other people came in. And then a nice-looking young blonde came in, who is standing here. And she lived there for a long time. And she loved my mother, and my mother loved her. And my mother not only loved the house, but loved the grounds. They loved to see the trees. And as they said, she planted these 2 big Deodora palms. Cedars, I mean. Now, before the house was changed, my father started a nonprofit called the Modern Forum, where he had speakers coming from all over the country. They were philosophers, they were all the actors, everything, and they would come and have dinner here and then go downtown to the Philharmonic, which was on 5th Street, to give their speech. And I was around 12 or 13, and I remember specifically having dinner with Eleanor Roosevelt and Orson Welles. A lot of people came through here, and we have a list of the people, famous people. But it's quite a place, and though after 17 years I lived elsewhere, but I always was in Los Angeles. And my mother was a fantastic woman. She had a hip replacement at 97 it was just local. And 3 months later she was swimming in my pool. Unbelievable woman, and she lived in 3 centuries. She died in the morning watching her favorite picture, Gone with the Wind, and that's where Tara came in. She always felt this was Tara, and that's why that name appeared in all the legal documents in our lawsuit. Anyway, it's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to see this property the way it is, and I thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Weitzman. Are there any questions from anybody?
Why did it take so long?
Why did it take so long?
Yeah, we all want to know that.
I guess the reason that it moved so quickly now is that elections have consequences. And in March, we had the election of my colleague over here who's remaining silent so we don't violate the Brown Act, Councilmember John D'Amico. And then I switched positions. And so, ultimately, that's what it is. An election was held, and it changed the ground.
That's always that. So,
James.
Mike Jenkins said told us you can't call it the permanent park yet because of the CEQA and everything. What do you envision the timetable for this being?
Well, you know, the entitlements are still in place that were issued. So the entitlements have not yet been revoked. We've given direction to staff to move forward now to revoke the existing entitlements. The way that the property was approved, it was always approved to preserve the historic structure and to be a public park. The one part of the entitlements that are now changing are the senior housing, both in the interior and that were designed for the back and side of the property grounds. So that is the significant change that is happening. In order for us to move forward, of course, we need to now identify the proper funding sources for the rehabilitation and maintenance of the home. Prior, we were using HUD money to assist with that. We've now lost the HUD money, so now we need to look for other revenue streams to deal with the preservation issues. But we also have to go through a public process and consider the environmental impacts of any potential future uses. For example, you know, a wedding sounds like a beautiful thing to have here. But having 100 people come here to do a wedding means 100 parking spaces out there lost, and so the people who live on Laurel may not be happy with that sort of high-intensity usage here. So we have to sort of consider what types of uses exist out there and what potential impacts they will have on the neighborhood in terms of sound, in terms of traffic, in terms of parking. So we're going to have to go through the same CEQA process that any public use would require. Not as
Would you say that this is a historic structure that is being saved in a historic manner for the small city of West Hollywood?
Manor, M-A-N-N-E-R or M-A-N-O-R? Nice double entendre.
You did good.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, now as the city is now celebrating its silver anniversary and we're moving forward, I think we're becoming more cognizant of trying to preserve what history we have. Another item last night was trying to preserve a lot of gay culture along Santa Monica Boulevard. So I think like a lot of cities, Beverly Hills is encountering the same sort of issues as how do we preserve the history that exists here on the west side.